Hello movie Barfs, and welcome back to the channel. Batman vs Superman was the biggest disappointment of the decade for many comic book fans, and it was a foretaste of the disaster to come that was Joss-tice League. As a kid, the concept of Batman fighting Superman on screen was a pipe dream that we could only fantasize about. I'd say that concept on paper is more valuable than the concept of the Avengers coming together. The closest thing I got for a Batman-Superman event during childhood was the Superman-Batman animated movie in the 90s, where they tussle around a bit before teaming up to stop Joker and Lex Luthor. Check that out if you haven't, by the way. It's a better structured movie than BVS is. Back to BVS, I really don't like this movie. Every time I see it, I just relive the disappointment of how something with such potential was just wasted. At the outset, it's easy to blame the trend of comic book movies deliberately taking a darker, edgier tone after the success of Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy. And that's a huge part of why this film doesn't work. It's unnecessarily mopey and depressing, causing the studio to pivot away to a more comedic and lighter tone as we see in Joss-tice League and subsequent DCEU films. I guess that's the natural fluctuation of things. Sometimes we have to go to extremes before we can settle on a happy medium. Back in the 90s, the campiness of the Schumacher Batman films caused the trend to swing all the way to a full-on dark and grittier tone in the Nolan films, and BVS is a victim of that fluctuation. The movie is just depressing. It even looks depressing with its color grading and filter. Every location looks dull and somber and takes away any form of escapism the audience can have. The characters are all Debbie Downers, and this shouldn't be the case for everyone except Batman. And in terms of characters, the filmmakers have a fundamental misunderstanding of them. Superman is once again too serious for his own good. Whether he's disguised as Clark or Superman, he's overly stoic with his deadpan expression and delivery. This isn't the kind of Superman that inspires hope in mankind. This isn't the kind of Superman that kids would run up to say hi. I'd say the public's knee-jerk response to Superman is still fear and uncertainty. And a big part of that is due to the way he's set up in Man of Steel. He's introduced as an alien from another world, and it's only because of his residence on Earth that attracts General Zod and his Kryptonians to Earth. Zod and his Kryptonians cause some apocalyptic level of destruction to Earth, which would lead most people to link it to Superman. While he eventually did save the day, naturally everyone would indirectly associate him to be the cause as well. If it were not for him, Zod and his minions wouldn't have touched Earth in the first place. So it isn't a huge stretch of imagination to see why this Superman isn't too well received in this universe. Everyone blames him for bringing Zod to Earth. Even in this sequel, it's hard for us as the audience to see him positively when the film itself is beating him down. Yeah, he still saves people and all, but mostly he's still being treated like an unwanted outcast. That isn't fun for us as an audience to watch. And it doesn't help that Henry Cavill isn't given much to work with to display his acting range. His Superman is too stiff and wooden and often expressionless. Not to mention his brows are constantly furrowed like he's always pissed off. He's constantly giving intense stares like Bucky, and it doesn't look too welcoming. Same goes for his version of Clark Kent. I've already covered this in another video, so I'll keep it brief here. Basically, his Clark Kent fails as a disguise. He's pretty much the same person he is as Superman as he is when he's a civilian. He doesn't create a different personality like Christopher Reeve's Clark Kent. He's just Superman wearing glasses. His saddest line in the film is where he goes, "No one stays good in this world," after realizing he might have to kill Batman. I mean, wow, that's depressing. Lex Luthor here is also pretty bad, but mostly in terms of his execution. They actually gave some depth and complexity to his character, linking his resentment towards God with his hatred of Superman. He wasn't saved from his abusive father as a child, and so he vents this anger out on Superman. That's actually better motivation than Gene Hackman's Lex Luthor, who's evil just because he is. But the main issue is Jesse Eisenberg's portrayal. When the audience has a certain expectation of something, it's fine if you, as a filmmaker, deliver something different. Characters are adapted to fit their current storylines all the time, but if you change the character too much, and those changes don't benefit the character's portrayal, you piss off the audience, just as in the case of Jesse Eisenberg's Lex. Lex Luthor is typically more of an older guy, someone authoritative with a strong screen presence who can stand his ground against a being as powerful as Superman despite not having any powers of his own. He's usually cold, calculative, and collected while harboring his next diabolical scheme. Jesse Eisenberg has none of that. He looks like a nerdy college student, although he's the same age as Cavill in real life, and he's shown to be frequently prone to childish emotional outbursts. He has hardly any screen presence and feels very underwhelming for a guy who's supposed to be Superman's arch nemesis. He just looks like a jaded version of the Mark Zuckerberg he played in The Social Network. And although he's clearly evil, like sacrificing his assistant in the Senate bombing, his plans were hardly genius level. His scheme to clash Superman and Batman against each other basically involves taking Martha Kent, Superman's mom, hostage, and then threatening Superman that he has 60 minutes to bring him the head of the bat or Martha dies. He's counting on Batman having a fighting chance with the kryptonite that he stole earlier against Superman. But, whoa, slow down here. Did we miss something? How does Lex Luthor know that Superman is Clark Kent? There is nothing in the film to suggest that he uncovered his secret identity. He only had a firm handshake where he felt Clark's good grip earlier. Perhaps the film was already crammed with too many subplots that they couldn't find the time to explain this, but this is bad writing as it causes us, the audience, to feel like there's something missing. But that aside, holding Martha hostage is a pretty weak reason to motivate Superman to kill Batman. Who's to say that he wouldn't try to find a peaceable solution? I mean, we just saw that he was able to hear Lois's scream from miles away and save her in time after she was pushed by Lex off the rooftop. Why couldn't he hear the screams of his mom? Or use his super speed to comb through the entire city? That would take less than the 60 minutes he's given. And while he's killed Zod in the previous film, we see that Superman doesn't take a life except only as a last resort. And that's the issue with this conflict between Superman and Batman in this movie. They are two characters who, in the comics, have a strong moral code against killing. The filmmakers just made Batman a flat-out murderer right from the start of the movie, which was a terrible choice, by the way. Okay, so we're left with Superman. Guess they couldn't find a good reason for him to kill Batman, so the writers had to come up with this hostage situation. But that's the thing, maybe they don't have to want to kill each other for a versus scenario. Maybe they could just fight over something else for the time being. I mean, did anyone seriously think that both Batman and Superman, who have a history of not killing in the comics, would suddenly be in a duel to the death at each other's throats? It would be perfectly in line with our expectations if they were fighting for lower stakes without having to kill each other. And based on the nightmare sequences in the film, it looks like the true Batman vs. Superman film would be the one set in the apocalyptic future where Superman has legit turned evil and ruling with an iron fist like in the Injustice storyline. That seems like the eventual payoff that this film was setting up for. Anyway, back to the fight. It was just so unimpressive and void of logic. Superman flies down after seeing Batman turn on his bat signal and immediately just starts calling him Bruce out of nowhere. But, whoa, slow down again. How did he know that Batman is Bruce Wayne in the first place? Just like in the case of Lex discovering Superman's identity, this comes out of left field. We as the audience have seen nothing to confirm that Superman has discovered that Batman is Bruce Wayne. He just walks up to him and calls him Bruce, and Batman isn't the least fazed by it, as if he's already aware that he knows. We did get that scene at Lex's party where Clark overhears Alfred in Bruce's earpiece, but that doesn't confirm him as Batman. He could have just been snooping around on a competitor or doing something along the lines of corporate espionage. How does Clark come to the conclusion that he's Batman just from that conversation he has with Alfred? I have no idea. So the film seems to be missing important steps in its setup. And the thing is, it wouldn't take very long to set this up. All Superman has to do is simply use his X-ray vision and he can peek behind the cowl. Heck, even the animated Batman-Superman movie I mentioned at the start did this, and it worked. I just wonder why BVS didn't do something similar. Superman and Batman did meet face-to-face in costume earlier, when Batman was chasing down Lex's trailer shipment. All they had to do was show Superman using his X-ray vision, and that would have been enough. Or have him find out his identity any other way, through his own investigation of some sort. But the important thing is to at least show us, the audience, how he knows without us having to jump to our own conclusions. And by the way, in this scene, it's pretty odd that Superman would just let Batman threaten him. He's clearly asserted dominance by wrecking his Batmobile just by standing there without lifting a finger. It seems uncharacteristic that Superman would just fly away after Batman's threats when, in his own words, He showed him mercy. I feel this Superman would have just put Batman back in his place. Maybe disarm him and throw him to the GCPD. That would have been fun to watch. So after they meet, Superman tries to tell Batman of the situation, but he's rudely interrupted by Batman's traps. But the thing that doesn't make sense is that after dealing with all his traps, Superman doesn't bother telling Batman about the situation anymore. He could have just immobilized Batman and said something to the effect of, "Hey, my mom Martha is being held hostage, so why don't you stop being a jerk and help me save her?" There were multiple times in the fight sequence where Superman could have just ended the fight with his super speed, but I guess for the sake of Batman's plot armor, he doesn't do it. I won't beat a dead horse with the Martha sequence, since it's already been ridiculed by everyone and their mother, but all I'll say is that the fact that their fight can be stopped so easily is indicative of how shallow their conflict was in the first place. It would have been better if they had just adapted the Injustice storyline right off the bat. That would have been a more convincing reason for them to duke it out. And this brings us to Batman, the biggest character disappointment of the film. Just like the Martha scene, this has already been pulverized all over the internet, so I won't delve too much into it. Making Batman a killer is a betrayal of all that he stood for in the long-standing history of the character. Plus, it sets up future inconsistencies in the DCEU. If Batman kills freely, then how is the Joker still alive? Surely Batman would have killed him by now, especially since he killed Jason Todd. And if Batman is a killer, then how does the GCPD still work with him? He would have become an outlawed fugitive like in Mask of the Phantasm, where he was accused of killing organized crime heads. And Bruce Wayne here is like the worst detective ever. In the scene at Lex's party where he fits his data transfer gadget onto Lex's computers, he pretty much gets tailed by a grand total of 3 people and doesn't appear to care. We have Mercy, Clark, and then Diana, who actually manages to steal his device from him. I thought Bruce should at least have some stealth skills, but guess not. Anyway, back to the plot. By this time, I'm just waiting for the film to end. We discover that Lex has created Doomsday from Zod's corpse, which is absolutely ridiculous. He was somehow able to bypass Kryptonian security from Zod's fingerprints, and how on earth did he know that mixing his blood into Zod's body would create the cave troll from Fellowship of the Ring in the chamber? We as the audience have to really suspend our beliefs to accept all these premises. This is on a whole other level compared to Kevin Spacey's Lex knowing how to use the Kryptonian crystals in Superman Returns. And having Doomsday is kinda premature, don't you think? He seems more like a villain you'd bring out in later phases of the franchise, especially since he's correlated with the death of Superman. So we have a big CGI fight at the end with Wonder Woman somehow joining the mix now? It seems cool that we have DC's Trinity fighting together now, but Wonder Woman was clearly just shoehorned in out of nowhere. Honestly, she does nothing in the film, and her entire character can be removed completely without doing any damage to the plot. Superman then dies while dealing his killing blow to Doomsday, but there's no time to grieve since right at the end, we see a hint that he may still be alive. Now that's just ineffective storytelling. Of course we know his death isn't permanent, but they don't even give the audience some time for it to sink in and marinate. Showing him to still be alive completely nullifies the death scene and removes its emotional weight. At least when Star Trek wanted to bring Spock back after Wrath of Khan, they kept him dead at the end of the movie. There was no hint that he was alive or that he was going to be revived. So I guess Superman's dead, but not actually dead? Overall, BVS was hugely disappointing. For a concept with so much potential, with 2 beloved characters that fans hold dear, it fell far short and ended up disillusioning the fans instead. The film's major flaw lies in its story and characters. For a film titled Batman vs. Superman, it presents a weak reason for them to clash in the first place. The conflict feels shallow and unrealistic. Characters were reinvented to become inferior versions of the source material. Then we have plot holes in the story where secret identities are exposed without informing the audience, and alien technology that can create whatever the plot requires. The film suffers from pacing issues too. It's a victim of the second act trap. The film really needs to just get to the point instead of getting sidetracked into needless subplots and storylines. All the extra stuff like Clark going on a hike with Ghost Dad and Lois going on her investigation could have been cut. And don't bother with the extended cut. It just makes it even more drawn out. The extra scenes don't add anything to the story other than what we already know. Lois and her investigation only serves to tell what the film already shows. that Lex is trying to cause death wherever Superman is around. We see that clearly in the courtroom scene with the exploding wheelchair, and we as the audience can piece 2 and 2 together. The theatrical cut already shows that to us. We didn't need the extended cut to blatantly tell it to our face. I guess it's good news that we won't be seeing continuations of these character versions anymore, with Zack Snyder moving on from the DCEU. His approach to filmmaking is too niche, and it appeals to only a select audience. It was a short run, but I'm glad it's over. Better luck next time, DC.